Okay, now we're going to go over big stick diplomacy and Roosevelt and the Panama Canal. All right. So we're done with McKinley. McKinley's dead, and now Roosevelt takes over and decides he's going to be just as active as McKinley. In fact, more so. And we're sort of as we talked about on Friday, he always used the adage, "Walk softly and carry a big stick." So his type of diplomacy is going to sort of be dubbed big stick diplomacy, which is on the board. If you can read this, that's good. I try to make it big for you guys to read it. If you can't, you've got the packet at home, so hopefully it'll work out. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Panama Canal. Originally, the Panama Canal, with the Clayton-Bulwer Treaty of 1850, was to be left alone. The British said, leave it alone. So we did. But increasingly, with our new territory that we'd acquired from the Spanish-American War, from annexing Hawaii, we had a lot more territory to take care of, and Roosevelt really wanted a canal. So our Secretary of State, named John Hay, was able to deal with the English in the Hay-Pauncefote Treaty of 1901. We get the rights from England because they had owned and they controlled part of this land. We got the right to build a canal from England. Hold on one second. All right. So we get this and we begin to build, but the problem was Panama was owned by Colombia, and the Panamanians wanted their own country, but it was owned by Colombia. So Roosevelt, in grand Rooseveltian tradition, decided, well, we're going to have the Panamanians get their independence, and we're going to be getting this at the same time, this canal. So we used something called gunboat diplomacy, and by what really gunboat diplomacy means is we put ships on both sides of Panama, on the Atlantic and on the Pacific side, and a revolution was started, and our gunboats did not allow the Colombians to come into the Panama Isthmus and try to defeat them. So we literally and physically did not allow this to happen. Most revolutions take years to happen. Sometimes in America the Revolutionary War took 8 years. This literally took a few days. And a few days after we had done this, in fact, it started in November, early November, like the 1st or 2nd of November 1903, and by the 4th or 5th, it was over. Literally 3 or 4 days, and the whole revolution was done. We recognized Panama as having its own country, and we signed the Hay-Beneuvria Treaty. This guy was French, and he wanted some, he had like political influence and was part of the new Panamanian government. We signed this. This gave us rights to several miles for us to construct the canal and rights to control the canal. Several other countries, and specifically Britain and France, had tried to build a canal, and it was unsuccessful. They had run into malaria problems. They had run into just basic engineering issues. So when we took this over with the Hay-Beneuvria Treaty, the first thing we did was go in and literally dig huge ditches, and we killed every bug we could find. For years, we got rid of all the bugs in the area, which is a lot because it's a tropical area, try to get rid of malaria, right? Cut out malaria, cut out yellow fever, cut out all the diseases that went along with the environment, so we could make it not only inhabitable, but able to work. And it took years, but the construction worked. In fact, it's one of the, if you haven't seen it, you can also go on YouTube and find some really great and cool looking things about the Panama Canal. It's great. It's a system of locks, and we'll talk more about it when you guys get back, but these are the things you need to know that get us Panama Canal. And when we get to Panama Canal, now our prestige around the world has gained even more because we have quicker access to the Pacific and the Atlantic going through the canal. All right? And then sort of moving on, Roosevelt then declares a corollary, or an addition to the Monroe Doctrine. We call it the Roosevelt Corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. And the whole purpose is keeping European powers out. Remember, originally we had said in the Monroe Doctrine, no new European powers. And that's changed. Now with the Roosevelt Corollary, we're just saying nobody in general is coming over here. We are essentially the police of the Western Hemisphere. And it starts with the Venezuela crisis. Again, Venezuela. We had the boundary dispute. Now Venezuela owes Germany money, and Germany wants it. So they're going to be coming into the area. with ghost ships. They're going to attack Venezuela, and they want their money. And we don't want Germany there because with a German, presence, that's going to put our prestige and power in jeopardy. We do not want a huge European power in our continent. So what Roosevelt does is he works out with the Venezuelans and he says, we'll pay Germany directly and then we'll get the money from the Venezuelans. In fact, several other countries in the area would get these huge debt problems and they would owe countries lots of money. In Latin American and Central American countries, for decades and decades and decades, having credit to help the people of their countries and then getting behind in loans and owing tons of money has been a problem that is sort of, it's cyclical, right? It goes with the territory. And instead of allowing European countries to come and collect, we just decide we're going to go in there and pay it for them and then get the money ourselves. So that's sort of the genesis of the Roosevelt corollary with the Venezuela crisis. Now with the Western Hemisphere's police, and a lot of the Western Hemisphere, except us, doesn't like this. They see this as a huge intrusion on their territorial integrity. They see this as not allowed, or as America freely admitting and is open about the fact that we are now going to have some say in their domestic lives. And clearly we don't want them to have a say in our domestic world. But we feel, again, with U.S. imperialism, that is now our right to do that. And it's dubbed the bad neighbor policy. So the big stick diplomacy, we have the Panama Canal, we have the Roosevelt corollary, and we're going to start intervening in Cuba and Dominican Republic, in Haiti, and a bunch of Central American countries. Every time there's an issue, if there is any kind of economic instability, if they owe money, if there's any problems that we feel to be remotely problematic for America, then we send in our Marines, we bring the Navy in, and it becomes almost habit for America to be sending in the Marines, these countries, all part of big stick diplomacy and the Roosevelt corollary, right? And then we sort of transition into Roosevelt dealing with Russia and Japan. The Russo-Japanese War has been going on forever, or a couple of years, not ever. And in fact, it's the first war where a European nation loses to another non-European nation since like the 15th or 16th century with the Byzantine Empire. Japan was running out of money and running out of people and secretly asked the United States, specifically Roosevelt, if he would intervene. So these peace talks between the two occur. It's called a Portsmouth Treaty. It was off of Roosevelt's, not far off Roosevelt's actually house off of the East Coast. And he negotiated back and forth. The Russians didn't want to give in. They didn't want to lose prestige. The Japanese needed some money. And with the, should be on your packet, but if it's not, the Treaty of Portsmouth, this was actually off Rhode Island, ends the war. Japan gets part of the Falkland Islands, which are up here. Russia gets another part. America, actually, Roosevelt said that he would give Japan more access to Korea. That was a secret part of the agreement. Russia's mad about this. In fact, Russia is mad because they think America is being unfair and they don't like this. America had criticized the fact that Russian Jews were being persecuted. And so there's a little bit of anti-Americanism in the official Russian foreign policy. And we had, that's sort of been close. Remember, we bought Alaska as a favor to the Russians, and now it's not as close. The Japanese are mad. They wanted money out of it, and they wanted all the Falkland Islands. They don't get what they don't all get what they want. And out of this, Roosevelt actually gets the Nobel Peace Prize, literally the most aggressive imperialist in American history up until this time, wins the Nobel Peace Prize for forging this peace between the Russians and the Japanese. The next president, obviously, is Taft, and his type of diplomacy is going to be called dollar diplomacy. Dollar diplomacy is essentially a way for America to use its investment funds around the world, specifically in Latin America, Central America, and in the Pacific, use its money, its investment, and to protect it with the military.